Hello. Okay, I'm going to speak a bit more slowly this time. Does the presentation just appear, or do I have to do this? Okay. Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of Grin and where we're going with it. It's a bit late in my time, so I apologize if I'm slurring words or anything. I'm not actually drunk, it's just like midnight as far as I'm concerned. So, okay, so we'll go right to it. So here's what I'm going to talk about. First, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the roadmap, talk about the goals. I'm going to talk about where we are now, a bit about how we got there, current focus, and then I'm going to move on to talk about the future core tech that we're going to look at. Finally, I'm going to hit you up for money at the end, like we've done a few times this morning. I thought I'd do it again. Okay, so number one, the roadmap. Oops. Okay, roadmap. There it is. Now, what am I trying to say here? Grin doesn't have a roadmap. We got to where we are now without necessarily having to have some nice productized roadmap. Here's what we're going to do and how's we're going to do that. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about our overall approach and how it doesn't quite fit in with your usual project where you have it run by a lot of project managers and interested parties expecting you to have a roadmap out there. And I think our approach to development works quite well for the type of product that Grin is. So I'm going to start by talking about our project goals, right? So very basically, right off of our website for the most part, provide open, scalable privacy for all, further the research, development, and testing of Mimblewimble, and ensure that Grin is accessible and usable for all needs. So private, scalable, open. Nowhere do we have a line item here that says, and reward early investors with anything. So it's a very open and I think honest project in that regard. So right, and so where do we want to take Grin? Like, now, first off, I think it's not realistic to think we're going to jump off the bat and suddenly replace all cash and replace Visa and MasterCard at this point. But I do think a more realistic goal for right now is to make Grin compelling in places where cryptocurrency is already used. So you can do your payment in Bitcoin, Monero, or Grin. I think that would be a nice place for us to get to, just to start. Obviously, we have a long way to get there. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So where we are right now. So we launched a blockchain. It contains all of these wonderful technologies here that have taken, all of them taken quite a lot of time to develop, a lot of them standing on the shoulders of a lot of work done by people here and all over the world. So obviously we have Mimblewimble, FastSync, SchnorrSig. You can read this yourself. This is not a technical presentation. I'm not going to talk about any of these in detail. And okay, aside from all of that, I think we've built up a very strong initial community. So we have all of these things at launch, and like when we were putting Grin together, we didn't know we'd actually have so much at launch. I'm actually quite surprised that so many community projects already exist 2 weeks into launch. So we have these block explorers, wallets, different mining pools, exchanges, and a very, very large and involved community. And see you next. Actually, I'm gonna go back a bit. Right, so this is one of the approaches that we've taken recently, and fairly recently, I'd say. So whereas instead of going out there and prescribing all of the solutions to the problems with Mimblewimble, so there's some difficulties in making transactions. It has to be interactive, provides a lot of usability difficulties and what have you. But rather than go and prescribe like an approach for doing it, we decided to focus very much on the core of the technologies. And to provide enough tooling to make it easy for the community to come along and provide other solutions. So we have like the wallet 713 that we saw earlier, other community solutions that all have their own different ways of performing Grin transactions, and a lot of them will be addressing different needs. So that's pretty much the approach that Grin, the project, has taken. Also, we had a security audit. We talked about this earlier, so I don't think we need to go through it again. Right, so like our current focus, and so basically what we're going to be doing, and this is straight from Igno himself, we're going to be doing performance stability enhancements, security improvements. I think that's a given. Actual functionalities, a few, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, and support an ecosystem, which is what I was just talking about, as in try and provide the tools to make development of to make Grin easier to use, to make Mimblewimble easier to use, and leave a lot of that up to the community. And big thumbs up from both of us there. So, as for the ongoing improvements, obviously there's a whole list of GitHub issues that have to be addressed. Continuous security enhancements to what's there, especially based on the results of any audits that we might have. That tiny line there says maybe support Windows one day soon. That's something that I know gets asked about a lot, but the problem is none of the core developers are really interested in running Windows. I might grab it one day just to get it out of the way. Okay, as far as the new features, so we've heard a lot about the kind of upcoming technologies that we're excited about and could be integrated into Grin. But we're not going to try and slam them all at once, or it's certainly not going to present a roadmap of when each of these technologies is going to be in there. It's going to be a very calm and measured introduction as we think about things and decide whether and how to integrate them. And then, of course, enhancements and extensions to support the community. This is a lot of engineering work, straight up engineering work, to get our APIs together and make them more usable based on feedback from the community. So this pretty much says what I just said already, so I don't know why it's there. Right, so the future core tech, and again, there have been a lot of presentations about this already. In the near term, we have atomic swaps, which have already been done by Jasper. I don't know if he's talked about it, but we've actually had atomic swaps against Ethereum and Bitcoin test chains. Relative locks is something that we're going to be looking at in the near future, because it's been talked about a lot. It's needed for a lot of other things. We're all excited about Fly Client, but again, there's issues that need to be worked out before we can integrate that. And then another version of Dandelion, Dandelion++. I'm not going to get into it, but okay. And then in the kind of longer term, again, this is pretty much a list of technologies that we've already had presentations about today. Each of them are great. They're all exciting, but they're all highly theoretical at this point. When and how they can be integrated into Grin is something that we all, for each one of these, need to do a lot of thinking and a lot of research and a lot of testing and a lot before we can actually say we're going in. Again, one of the reasons we don't have a roadmap. We don't know when it's going to be practical to put these in, or even if a lot of these are practical to put in. So on the community side of things, right, so as I was saying, we take a non-prescriptive approach. We want to provide all of the tools. Like, for instance, you can't really see it very well here, but that's the basic steps that you need for a Mimblewimble transaction there. And you know, in using the command line client, sometimes it feels like you're entering every one of those steps manually as you're going along. We want to try and take that and provide the tools so that the community reduce the pain as much as possible there. So most of this, as I was saying, is about engineering work. It's about providing APIs for the wallet, the transactions, keychain, etc. And of course, you know, documentation, wikis, developer support, all the kind of usual stuff that we're doing to maintain a project. So on the council and governance side, I think as Dan presented earlier, well, we don't have a lot to say about the future of that because we don't know. And what we have there seems to work for now. We think it should be more diverse than it is at the moment, but the questions of how, when, why do we expand this aren't really obvious. It's a very difficult problem. We need to continually balance between having too much centralization with a few people against trying to run a complex project, which doesn't work when you have the whole world weighing in on everything. So, and then the future of funding, of course. We've talked about this quite a bit already. So there's no ICO pre-mine, heard all this before. What is kind of nice is what's starting to happen now is a lot of the initiatives that people have announced. So for instance, Grim Mint had said they were going to donate a percentage of proceeds to Grin. Some other mining pools have done that, and we're starting to see that come in as a kind of small but hopefully steady and growing source of revenue. We have again, the specific campaigns and developer funding still going on as well. It's a difficult way to fund, but it's worked so far in the past. And then funding me, of course, Yeastbloom. There have been so many people talking about this already, I don't feel like repeating it right now. I think I don't want to hit you too hard over the head with this, but it really very much, it does help. I've been able to focus on Grin full time for just over the past year now, and I think it's been evident kind of in the work I've been able to get through, and a lot of the not always even the exciting stuff, like sometimes, you know, basic stuff like the logging, the build management and stuff. I've had time to sit down and do this because I've been a dedicated full-time developer to this, so I think this is crucial to the project going forward. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, we have the last and final